Hi and welcome to today's video. In today's video I'm going to give you my top 5 pieces of advice that I wish I knew when I first started out in wedding photography. But best of all, I'm outside! Tell you what, after 7 or 8 weeks of lockdown, I am not as fit as I was. This is bad. I need to get back into exercise. Oh, I am absolutely exhausted. It must be 7 or 8 weeks now since I've done any real exercise. So walking up this hill to get to this point has really knackered me out. So apologies for being out of breath. But anyway, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 5 things which I wish I knew back when I started out as a wedding photographer in 2006. So it's been almost 15 years now since I photographed that first wedding. And if you'd like to hear about how I first got into wedding photography, you can do so in this video up here. But in that time, the whole industry has changed, and I'd like to think that I've learned a few things along the way. Well, I hope I have anyway. So what I was thinking is, if I could go back to 2006 and speak to myself when I was first starting out, what advice would I give myself back then to help me get better? I actually asked this question on my Instagram recently and received lots of really great answers, but weirdly none of them actually were the same as the list that I've come up with for this video. So let's go through those now. So, the first thing that I would tell myself is, Neil, you do not need the most expensive cameras and the most expensive lenses to produce great images. When I first started out, I can remember always thinking that I couldn't be as good a photographer as I wanted to be unless I had all the best cameras and the most expensive gear, and I spent a lot of money on buying those things. But whilst it's true that having great equipment does definitely help to a degree, it is nowhere near as important as developing your actual skills as a photographer. Although the camera manufacturers may want us to believe otherwise, you do not need the latest and greatest cameras. As long as you have a camera which is capable of doing the job, and in reality that's virtually any professionally made DSLR or mirrorless camera in the past 5 years, then you definitely have the tools that you need. Practicing and critiquing your photography skills will make you an infinitely better photographer than always having the most expensive and the latest camera will do. So trust me, save your money. Now, this next piece of advice which I'm going to give you is huge, and if I could go back in time and speak to myself back in 2006, I would be telling myself this over and over again, and it's this: do not worry what other wedding photographers think of you. For some reason, despite the fact that as wedding photographers we're usually working for ourselves and we're running our own businesses, so many of us, and I definitely used to include myself in this, we worry about what other wedding photographers think of us and our work. But why? It makes absolutely no sense when you think about it. Our priority should always be to produce the best work that we can for our bride and grooms, and if we're pleasing them, well, that's really all that matters. The reality is that worrying what others think of us only succeeds in holding us back. For example, I can remember back in 2013 when I was looking at holding my first wedding photography workshops, I was really worried that more established wedding photographers would look at me and judge me because they may think that I didn't have enough experience at the time to be running workshops. Now, thankfully, I managed to overcome that fear and I did them anyway, but if I hadn't, it would literally have stopped me from doing something which I now love. The same goes for YouTube videos. In my videos, I'm sharing my thoughts and my advice with the world, and inevitably, I know that other photographers may disagree with some of the opinions or the way that I choose to shoot, and that's completely fine. Thankfully though, it's now, for me, water off a duck's back. It literally doesn't bother me what other people think. But if I did worry about those opinions, I literally wouldn't be stood here now. So please please, please do not worry what other people think of you and how you run your business, because when you run your own business, you're afforded the huge advantage of being able to do whatever you wish within that business. So you do what you feel is right and don't worry about what other people may think. So you do you. So the next piece of advice that I would tell myself is that you have to shoot more. The best way to get better at virtually anything is to practice, and it's exactly the same with photography. With something like photography, you can only learn so much from books. Ultimately, if you want to be a better photographer, you need to shoot more. Organise your own style shoots, go and shoot for fun, photograph your friends, your family, your pets, literally anything that involves you having your camera in your hands, because the more you do that, it is impossible not to improve. Now, I'm not proud to say this, but in the first few years of me photographing weddings, because I still had a day job and I didn't have all that much spare time, much of the learning that I did was done on the job, as it were, at weddings. I was lucky in that it all worked out for me, but I would have improved so much quicker had I made more time to go out and shoot for fun more often. A great way of doing this, and one that I definitely benefited from, was offering engagement shoots to every couple who booked me. That helped me to understand posing better. I got better at building a rapport with my couples, and ultimately I became a more confident and hopefully better photographer for it. And also, more recently, I've organised lots of my own shoots with friends just for fun, like this one, which I'll link to up here. So don't make the mistake that I did and learn on the job. Go out there and shoot more. So my next piece of advice is due to the fact that working on your own all day is much harder than you probably think it's going to be. So my advice would be to get in contact with lots of local wedding suppliers and other photographers and arrange to meet up with them for lunch, for drinks, and just create a friendship group of other wedding professionals who you can speak to throughout the day. Because going from an environment where you may be used to working with lots of other people, that's what I did. I went from an office environment where I was around people all day, every day, to suddenly working on my own. It was much harder than I thought it was going to be. And I'm an introvert. I'm someone who likes my own company. So in many ways, I was the perfect person to work on my own. And I love it now, but at the beginning, I did find it very, very difficult. So that would be my advice. Surround yourself with other wedding suppliers and photographers and just meet up with them socially, because that way, throughout the day, you're going to have people to speak to who you can relate to and who can relate to you. Because if you don't do that, it is mentally very, very tough to work on your own. I can't imagine doing this job now without knowing lots of other wedding photographers who I can speak to throughout the day. And if I didn't have that, I think the job would become so much more difficult. So that's my advice. Get in contact with lots of local wedding suppliers, lots of local wedding photographers, create a big friendship group, and then go out with them regularly. It makes the whole job feel so much better, and you'll feel like you're part of the human race. Now, there is one thing which every successful wedding photographer has in common. They all have their own unique style. It is one of the biggest reasons that they are successful, because they developed a style and a look, whether it is how they shoot or how they edit, which is unique to them. So that is exactly what I'll go back and tell myself for piece of advice number 5. Develop your own unique style and don't follow trends. There have been loads of trends during my time as being a wedding photographer, whether that be editing, from the sort of washed out, desaturated look, to everyone trying to edit their images so that it looked like they were taken on a film camera, or the way that people shoot. But ultimately, all that following a trend does is it makes your work look the same as everybody else. So when the reality is surely that we want to try and stand out from the crowd, why would we want to do that? It doesn't really make any sense. This goes back to my earlier advice of not worrying caring what others think of you, and it's just the same here. Just because everyone is using a particular preset, because right now that is cool, that doesn't mean that you have to or that you should. In fact, the best thing to do actually, I think, is to do the opposite of that. Developing your own style so that your work becomes unique is more or less essential to help you stand out from other wedding photographers. So that would be my last piece of advice to myself back in 2006. Don't be like everybody else. Now, there are lots of other pieces of advice that I will give myself too. Back up everything religiously. Take a spare pair of clothes to weddings. Always have more memory cards than you think you're going to need. And batteries, you can never have too many. Drink lots of water on a wedding day. Be fitter. Always have a sat-nav in your car in case you end up in a place with no phone reception. And wear comfy shoes that have good grip.
It's okay.
Oh, you all right?
Yeah.
So, as always, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments what advice you would give to yourself when you were just starting out. I'd really love to know. And as always, if you have enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you could please like the video and consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this in the future. So thank you very much again for watching, and I will see you next time.